Welcome to Talking in Stations. It is July 7th. I am Matterall here. We're going to be talking about this summer of rage. I put that in quotes because we think it's more of a summer of disengaged. So, to help me discuss that, we have Rundle.
Hello, everyone. Lucky sevens today. If you believe in that sort of thing, go get your lottery tickets. Send me a little bit of money after you win. You can thank me later.
A little bit of Plex. Plex is going up. And
Flex is going
also,
up. Yeah.
also Shen is here. How you doing, Shen?
Doing well. Hello, hello.
All right. So, as you have seen, there is some discontent from some players in some places. I put the "some" in front of everything so that you know that it's a segment of the population, not the whole thing. But the one thing that's kind of scaring everybody is looking at that PCU number drop. We'll take a look at that in just a second. But these are the things that we're going to talk about. But first, I want to say that we are now officially caught up with our podcasts. I want to say thank you to all our podcast listeners. And sorry, June was off the rails like that. There was a lot of different things going on. Of course, the post-COVID was the biggest one, so time was limited as opportunities to do real-life social events had presented itself. But also, there was one of these things where you end up, once you start getting behind, you end up just staying behind. My only sadness is that we lost a couple shows. We weren't able to do a couple of shows in June, which is not like us. Normally, I think in our 5-year history, we've only lost like 3 shows to time. So it's just really one of those reminders that, like, it's a different time that we're in right now. It's a totally different time that we're in right now from the last year, but also the last 5 years. It's incredibly. I didn't even know how to kind of put this into words, but we're definitely going through a transition back to society, back to real life. And Talking in Stations is going to suffer from that because this was built on a lot of spare time and a lot of people's spare time.
Yep. Absolutely. And speaking of spare time, personally, thank you for putting all that, doing that hard work. For everyone listening, Matterall's not going to be super excited with this, but he literally just put in a cubic ass load of work to get those videos updated. So, for the community, thank you for working through all that and getting it caught up. That was all you. So thank you.
Well, thanks. And I just imagined my ass looking like a giant cube when you said that. Which is
Yeah, it
not
just
far off.
on that being a different time, I was a few of us were talking about this, and they were talking to grandparents and stuff who were around when World War II ended. A little odd, but World War II for most people, especially in Europe and over here, was a time where you just money wasn't plentiful. You spent time, you went to the factory, you worked, you did your thing, and if you were in the military, obviously your life was consumed by that, and the feeling of victory and coming home and then just, now what do I do, what's next, right? This, and then people were going
Let's
out
have
and there was this.
babies.
Right, that baby. There was a baby boom. There's an economic boom, but just that feeling. Their grandparents were talking about just that feeling of relief of it's over, and that, to me, that part of the conversation resonated. And so, I suspect that really is playing a big part. That has to be. I'm sure it is. Everyone around the world. This is a worldwide event, so it cannot be discounted. It cannot be ignored.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Rundle, putting stuff in perspective for us. Also, thanks to all the TIS staffers that are with us because they're the ones that kept the ball rolling. Shen here put in a lot of work to keep information current and useful. And Rich stepped up as a host, and all that helps because it gives us. It means that we don't have to take 2 weeks of silence in order to do this. I was supposed to take a 2-week vacation. That got turned into a 1-week vacation. And so I came back a little bit early, which may not have been the right thing to do, but things were going on. So, okay, but thanks for listening. And now let's get on with some more content as we can scrape it up these days. Not a whole lot that's going on that's really visible to players, but there's definitely a lot going on under the surface that we'll try to dig out for you. Should we do a little bit of news, Shen, before we move on to our topic?
Yeah, I think that's like the only bit of news we have today. which is the Liberation Day event that's going to come tomorrow, I believe. I think stated by the CCP Fozzie's tweet that we've seen today.
Yeah.
From the screenshot, we can see there's an option for you to choose between 7 tribes within the Minmatar Republic. And we don't know anything about what happened after we're going to choose each tribe. I think Astrology has done an analyzing video about this, so maybe we can go watch that video. But as far as I can see, it's basically a road of challenge. You complete challenge, get some reward. At the end, there may be some special skins or special boosters you will get at the end of each challenge. And yeah, that's all the information we have seen so far. But we haven't given an official devlog yet about this event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we don't know what it means, but you get to select a tribe. I didn't realize there's so many tribes, but and they all have a history. I think Ashtarothi did a show a couple days ago where he talked about the individual histories and stuff. This Sunday we'll do the same thing. Maybe we'll get Arcia to talk about, although she's a Marian, she switched over to the Minmatar side of things. But since she's steeped in the roleplay community, there may be some stuff that she can pull out. Now, again, the roleplay community is not the same as the like lore or backstory community. They overlap, but they're not necessarily the same. So it's a different group. But we'll see if we can't dig out like some of the differences between these tribes and their behaviors and their patterns and that kind of stuff, so you can make a better choice. All right. If anybody read the Empyrean Age, the Brooders are brutal. They're like, yeah, some terrible stuff they do to their own people.
The only name I can recognize is the Thucker. That name is, I think that's one of the large cat battery. It's from their faction. So there's a Thucker large cat battery that has less power grade required compared to a Republic fleet one. So that's the only name that pops up for me.
Oh, and the Fanters, we've heard of them in the lore stuff, and Sebastier, they're the typical, you know, and then Starkmanir, step on my toe, Starkmanir, heard of them too, just can't pronounce it. Thucker Brutor, of course, but I haven't heard much of Verokiar or Crucial. And I'm going to stop saying stuff in Icelandic, I suppose, because I am wrecking it.
But did you really say the Brutors were brutal?
Yes.
All right.
Because they are. Read that novel, you'll find out. Let's take a look at other stuff. Fraternity roaming into Esoteria, that just never happened, right?
Yeah, never happened. I haven't seen them in a while. Like an official big fleet, at least.
Yeah. And we had an Outer Ring follow-up. We needed to clear the record. I haven't gotten a good... let's see what happened. As a result of the fight, we were able to downpin 3 dreads from Serenity Syndicate, and we were able to kill 2 of them. After downtime, Test came to assist. I need to talk to these guys to get their story straight so that I can present it properly. I can't read it right now, and I thought it would be a little clearer than this, but I have to digest it and figure out what happened. So we'll skip that. I was talking to somebody from, where were they from? I can't say the real name, but they were from Dragon Corp. So I hope to get back in touch with that person and then bring you an update on that story. Okay. Let's see. Winter. We'll go to Summer of Rage 2.0. This is an easy one because as it happens, if you read the novel for Empires of Eve, Volume 2, I'm actually cited in there like 3 or 4 times. I had a nice talk with the author, Andrew Groen. It's a great book, by the way. Let me look it up. Empires of Eve, Volume 2.
You've had him on the show as well, I believe, right?
Yeah. A couple times, yeah. Well, here it is, Empires of Eve Volume 2. This is the Kickstarter. And there's actually an official site. Let's see if we can get to it from there. Imagine there would be an easy place to find it. Well, anyway, I'm off already. Empires of Eve 2 is a novel about the history of EVE Online. There's obviously Volume 1. And this one basically is 2009 through 2014. And then it stops, right? Before 2016, World War B, let's call it. And he cites this article. That's why I'm in there, because this article was written, I was editor for INN at the time. So Summer of Rage, and actually broke down what the Summer of Rage looked like 5 years later. And I had some help from Dirk McGurk, Noisy Gamer, who were, we were all researching this together. And then I wrote it up. But one of the things I did was put together a timeline so you could see what the major events were and what people were mad about. We also talked about just how much damage was done to CCP at the time. What was it that CCP was feeling? How worried were they? And I've talked to former CCPers about this, and this was a definitely, red alert moment for them, because they saw something like 27,000 subs go away in very short order. I think I actually have that statistic here. Now, that's not confirmed by the company, of course, but and we'll get into these details a little bit more. And we predict the path of the whole thing, and it's a. I'll be right back. 1 second. Go ahead. Take it.
All right. So what we're gonna end up talking about is and right at the same time, I got a little something in my throat.
I'm back. Go ahead.
Holy bad timing.
Yeah. Well, that's just like, the engineer's out and then the backup engineer's out, and then you're really screwed. Okay, so if we look at this, I just want to get this number, but then versus now, because about 5 years ago, we had people, we called it the late spring of discontent. It wasn't quite a summer of rage, but everybody wants to compare themselves to the summer of rage because it was a big moment. And so that's what this article was written about. It's like, look, summer children, this is not 2011. 2011 was a disaster, and there were reasons for it. You were there, and I was there.
Yep.
And I can't find. I'll just look it up this way. There it is. 27,000 subscriptions they lost, and that was post Incarna, and they lost that fast. I think they lost that in like 6 weeks. Yeah, and the result was basically they had to lay off 20% of their staff because, as we explain in this thing, Incarna was supposed to bring in money. Instead, it cost them a ton of money at a time when they needed to pay a loan off to private investors. And those private investors were like, where's our money, Lebowski? And CCP basically said, oh, we got to do some things. And so they had to basically shelve World of Darkness. They had to cut 100 people in staff, and you know what we got for it? We got what we got now. Like it was players revolting and screwing the game up, in my opinion. And they think they did something great because they made the company bend the knee. And congratulations, you screwed up EVE Online. In my opinion, you screwed up EVE Online for good.
So if anyone's ever watched the Harden the Fuck Up video, right? That thing's done in 2009. CCP's growing. They got the community group, Guard, and they're doing these things like videos. Anyways, the reason why I bring this video up is because, they have offices now in a number of places: Atlanta, Shanghai, maybe somewhere in China, I think, somewhere else in China, maybe Singapore, and of course Iceland. They put all these people in the videos. And if I remember correctly, when they laid off a bunch of these people, a bunch of those people that are in the video go poof from CCP.
That's right? So sad. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. That's piece of information I got from some of my research and conversations back at the time, and I was talking at the time to the head guy for doing interviews with him. Dave, I think it's David something, the one who was doing
Oh yeah, a
the
marketing
main
guy.
the main marketing guy for
Yeah.
the Dust, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Had him on the show and did different things there, and
Wait, what show? You used to do a show. What was it called?
Lost in Eve. Yeah, we did
Classic Eve
Lost in Eve.
podcast. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Lost in Eve podcast with Jay Cougar and we would go find different guests. We had lots of different CCP on. Guard came on a few times and different people like that. But anyway, so what's happening, right? Like you guys were just like rocketing in the right direction, and then you're laying 27,000 people off, or not 27,000 people, 20% of your staff off. Like
1,000 people.
Yeah, 20% of your staff, right? So like, what happened? Who hit the detonate button, right?
I'm sorry, it wasn't 1,000 people. Wasn't 1,000 people.
No, just 20% of their staff. So I don't know I don't know that number right off the top of my head, but somewhere along the way I came across a number of those people in those videos were gone, which kind of sucks.
That does suck. Yeah, those are some of the groups. I think it was like 100 people or 200 people. I wrote it here somewhere, I think.
Yeah, I can look for that.
Anyway, don't worry. It's a grim time, right? Grim time. And then Hilmar comes out and apologizes because all this stuff was, all this stuff was released. We'll go back and just see what what made everybody so upset. But he comes out and apologizes, and then they had their layoffs. And then the community, right? All the guys that were complaining and quitting and saying, "I'm leaving, you should leave too." All those guys are like, wow, CCP took all the wrong lessons from this. And it's like, no, they didn't. They looked at their financial forecast. They had debtors looking for money. They had you quitting and telling other people to quit. And they had to do some stuff that were dramatic. And that is on you to a large degree. That is on you. So take responsibility for your stupid action of trying to get other people to quit the game when you want to quit. Because nobody can date the girl that you can't date or don't want to date anymore, right? That's what that is. So that's on you. And we see a little bit of that now, right? It's like people are upset about what? I don't know. Let's take a look at this article here. Now, I like the author of this article. I consider him a friend. He's in Goonswarm. I don't know if that makes a difference, but I do feel like a lot of Goonswarm is in on this line of thinking here. Because I hear it from them. That's why I'm saying that, not just because I want to say that. That's kind of what I've heard. And a lot of the sources seem to be coming from there too. But you've read this, right, Shen? What'd you think?
Yeah, so in there, so I'll just give a small overview. So you talked about the peak concurrent user, the PCU problem that we're seeing. So basically, the PCU has dropped. So it has dropped, and it's the lowest we've seen since 2006, after the game started. And part of that is because of the scarcity. Part of that was because it's an industrial change, and it's basically DSS. So it's basically what's called the stagflation. That's what we're going to talk about next, I guess. So that's part one of that. And the second part is went on for like 2 or 3 paragraphs talking about the Plex selling that we have discussed, I think a few episodes back, when, like say, a new brew lost their first or second ship, they would get a pop-up on their screen saying, buy Plex and replace the ship, right? So the second one is kind of meh, like it's just a good old topic about CCP doing their marketing, stuff like that. But the first one is really worth talk. It's really worth our time, I think, to go in really deep in that too.
Yeah. All right. So there's a few things going on. Let's look at them. One is let's just face it, scarcity. There's people who are hurting from scarcity and they're not liking it. And let's talk about scarcity for a second. Let's just have a discussion here. Because Shen, you can maybe go first because you're somebody that is suffering from scarcity. So why don't you explain it from the pain side of things?
Yeah. So So what's happening right now is in nullsec. So there are two parts to it. One is the mining side, which is they're less worth in asteroid belts, and there are less kinds of ore, right? Before you could mine low-sec ore and null-sec ore together in null-sec, but right now you can only mine null-sec ore, and they're spawning in very small chunks. So it's very hard for roll codes and basically big mining operations or even just medium mining operations going to go into the belt. It's not worth it right now. And second part to that is the ESS, or the dynamic bounty system. So right now, let's say if I farming a system and there's nobody comes to the system to fight, or just however, like there's just safe for me, and that the index of that system will go down, and eventually the lowest it can go to 30%. And yeah, basically, and then that's basically hurting the money income too. So right now, the combination of those two things plus the industrial change we've seen recently caused a stagflation, which means that people have lower income while at the same time the price of ships, especially capitals nowadays after the industrial change, are skyrocketing. So for Newbro, for the most basic part is taking them longer and longer, putting more and more effort into getting their first goal, basically. Either it's a Marauder, it's a Dread, or like even though right now capital ship, to be honest, for a new bro is kind of impossible with like say 4 billion on the line to just get it.
All right. So, I mean, what is boil it down to just the top of the line or one sentence? What is the problem with scarcity from your perspective? Can't get into the ships you need?
At the end of the day, Eve is a game. So people want satisfactory out of this game. And it's hard to get satisfactory out of this game right now.
Satisfaction, right.
Yeah, satisfaction. Yeah.
All right. Rundle, where do you sit on scarcity?
I think it's I think it's a necessary function, right? I think they know that the stockpiles across the bigger factions in Eve are quite high. They know somehow they need to drive those things down. I think scarcity with the leveling the playing field for all the subcaps really is what will help new players get into the ships that they should be flying over the next year to 2 years, and that'll give them time to adjust. I personally don't encounter a lot of issues with the scarcity side of it. For me, the price changes to the bigger ships are really a function of the industrial changes, not of scarcity. I think the mining opportunities are still there. I think people are making money mining. I think there's pockets of areas where new bros are having problems, but that has nothing to do with scarcity. That has to do with like code and safety and not joining corporations and not understanding what you're doing and rushing your way to a Hulk and stuff, right? Traditional normal things. That's what I think. So I think the scarcity, yes, it's real. I'm not saying it's not real, but I think the impact is overinflated just because people don't like it. They want the $1,000 an hour job, but they don't like the $200 an hour job. Right?
Yeah,
They're used to the $1,000, and like, where's my 800 extra dollars? But bro, $200 an hour, pretty damn good, really. Overall, all things considering, right? So I think they are taking a careful approach to controlling and squashing the ISK income per hour number that was there before, simultaneously working through some of the stockpiles across Eve, and simultaneously setting themselves up with the new industry to be able to turn the taps however they need to do to adjust the flow of ships if there's a true stagnation of ships. Out in nullsec, they're still playing with super caps. We had the people on the show last week. They're still doing super cap hot drops. People are playing with the big ships. They're all over the kill board. There's not hundreds of them, but they're still it's still going on. So it's just going to balance out. I don't think Eve is any less fun because it's a little harder to get some minerals. That's my perspective.
All right. So again, that is scarcity, but it also rolls into the overall balancing of the economy, they call it, or the ecosystem, which means not only it's how fast players can make money, it's also how much things cost, how players build things. And one of the things that changed a lot was it takes more resources and a variety of resources now to build things. Some of the same things you could build before with just minerals. Now you got to build with multiple things, and it's harder to source all that stuff. So it's more labor intensive. It's also more costly if you buy that labor. And if you don't buy that labor, that's more time that you have to invest in order to get the same result, the same ship that you wanted to get at the end.
Right.
And both these things, I think, affect the consumer combined. And that's probably the big inch that players are feeling like Shen here and other players. There's some players have gone on to complain that scarcity is ruining the game, or maybe not that big a deal, but they're uncomfortable with it. I think you've seen CSM members talk about scarcity, etc. It's just all over the place. One of the things that people say is, hey, look, as ships become more, I just heard this yesterday, as ships become more expensive, PvP will dry up because people won't want to risk their ships. What do you guys think of that equation?
Depends on what ships we're talking about, right? Again,
it depends on what scale too. What scale of conflict are we talking about? Small game PvP, big fleets of 250 people in a fleet, they're different stuff.
Well, what I heard is like, if a dread's going to cost me 5 billion, I'm just not going to use it like I used it before.
I mean, at some point.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Shen. Go ahead.
I'll say this: a lot of time you see those big fleet fights, you get SRP'd after this. So PvP, at least from an outside perspective, it does not affect. So industry chain does not really affect PvP at all, because it's basically your SRP money will be higher than before. That's it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people who really do understand the. So it bounces back and forth. Let me actually back up. It bounces back and forth between those people who are like, it's just a game. Who cares? I'm here to have fun, and fine, I'll put it to risk. And then it bounces to those who are like, look, don't undock what you don't feel or feel you can afford to lose. So people who truly are like locked into that, man, I can't afford to lose that. Won't undock it, but they probably wouldn't have undocked it in the first place for the most part, because it's not like the ships went 100x, right? So will they undock it, in a ratio of 5 to 1? Probably, but there's a 5 to 1 change in the battles anyways, just because of the nature of the game, of how and what's happening in the game. But when you start talking about subcaps, battleships and down, where the cost index now of those doctrines are lower, I think you can have a lot more uh, old school fights, right? Where you just have a bunch of a Drake fight, or Drake versus Ferox versus Serbs, or uh, or whatever, right? Now, when you start getting into some of the T2 doctrines, or for sure the uh, pirate faction, now those are where I'm going to say, wow, it's going to get a little more expensive to undock and whelp 200 Macarials, or a bunch of rattlesnakes or something like that. It's going to get a little more pricey, but uh, you know, I think the people who will be most impacted will be low sec players, very small alliance players, the single roamers, people who don't, as Shen said, don't have the bigger alliances and SRP and those sort of activities behind them. Those are much more impactful when you have 6 ships, and they're kind of, you're only it's your personal fleet, and you lose 2 in a weekend. That's 33% of your ships gone, and that hurts. Eve does hurt in a way. If you have 200 ships in in your hangars and you lose 2 ships in a weekend, like, okay, who cares?
Well, it really seems to be more about we're trying to evaluate risk. We're talking about this talking in stations today in general. Do people actually fly less because things are more expensive? And I think that the studied answer is no. It depends on stockpiles. If something costs a lot or a little, it makes no difference if you have a perceived stockpile. If I have 100 dreads, I don't care how much they cost until I get down to 10, and then I care because I'm not looking to replace stuff. So I think stockpiles play a big role. The feeling of, do I have enough of this, regardless of price, is what dictates how much you put at risk of that stockpile. And even so, we are looking at the nature of risk versus reward. And it has to do more with frequency. The brain works in a weird way where it doesn't like to lose things a lot more. It doesn't like to lose things a lot more than it likes to win things. In other words, if you had a 50-50 proposition, you normally say, no, I'm not going to risk it, because I like what I have and I don't want to change that situation. Even if the prize is more, it takes a long time for that reward to get big enough for you to risk what you already have. And so they've done tests on this where one guy basically said, I'll give you $10. We'll flip a coin and I'll give you $10 if you win and you give me $1 if you lose. And very few people took that bet. They'd rather hold on to that $1, which is bizarre. But if you say, I'll give you 10 tries, the equation totally changes because frequency, for some reason, lessens the power of losing. And I think CCP has thought about this and said, let's get people out there fighting over and over and over and over again, because the frequency of loss hurts a lot less because you're going to get some wins in there. And that will take care of some of those losses. So you don't feel like you're just losing. And I wonder if that doesn't play into the whole ganking metaphor. Like those guys are really just losing, they get ganked. There is no upside to it unless somebody pats you on the back and says, let me teach you how not to do that again. But there is no trade-off there. It's really just a matter of losing, and that's painful. And I wonder if there's something there that needs to be reckoned with about risk versus reward. But anyway, the point is, people will fight as long as they feel like they can get their hands on another ship, like they're not trapped. And you just will downship, right? Because the smaller ships now actually cost less than before. So you might have had 1 million ISK. And you might have been able to buy that one ship for 1 million ISK. But now that 1 million ISK goes really far for anything lower than a battlecruiser and lower, which can be the majority of what you fight. You can fight in that all day long and never, ever lose your wallet. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I was going to say, is, the reason why we're talking a lot about this is because, we're trying to parallel is this enough to have a Summer of Rage 2.0? No, I think this is why Matterall and Shen are kind of calling it a Summer of Disengage. For some reason, this scarcity is kind of, it does play a small part. I won't disagree with that. It does play a small part for some people, and I think you stack enough of these things, right? The what's happening in the world, scarcity and changing of the industry and some new stuff coming in there, the war going on for a year, it whittles away at its own pocket of players. Each little group that is kind of aligned to these things loses 10% of the players or 15% of the players. The overall game loses 20% because of, what's happening in the world. And now all of a sudden you see the peak concurrent users amount drop, which was kind of what got us on this pathway, right? Is any one of them solely responsible for it? No, I don't think so. Do they all add up? Yes. Is it something to rage about? No, I don't think so. I don't think there's a rage factor. Certainly not like there was back in the real Summer of Rage, where there was real mistakes made and real things that were happening, decisions being made that fundamentally changed the game and really pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah, fundamental is a good word for it.
Yeah.
One other thing. So now we're looking at scarcity. Yeah, that creates some pain, as explained by Shen. We'll also talk about activity, because as people say they don't want to lose what they have. They stop flying around. Maybe that's part of it. The other thing that's something that needs to be looked at as far as the overall ecology of EVE Online is that we were in a place a few years ago where CCP Hilmar actually came back and said, yeah, we're stuck. You know, there's not enough new people to really turn over the old people. And without that churn, we have to go in there and manually churn it. And what was happening was everything could kind of, I don't know if people want to romanticize what was happening a year and a half ago, but it was dead as far as activity, as far as meaning. There was no meaning in loss. People were replacing and still do Titans, just, Titans were actually being used as suicide Titans by NC Dot up north. The game was in a bad, overabundant place, and overabundance breeds stagnation. Whereas the opposite, where everything is valuable, that actually breeds a lot more risk and a lot more, I think, heightened emotion, a lot more anger, basically, because you don't want to lose these things. But what I was getting to is Hilmar comes back and looks at this and it's stagnation, and he's like, look, people have not only figured out how to climb. This came from CSM Minutes, by the way. People have already climbed Mount Everest, building that Titan, for instance. And not only have they climbed it, but they told all their friends how to climb it. And there's a path with ropes and stakes, and there's oxygen bottles. And so these guys you can be like, Postman Bill, and climb Mount Everest because it's all laid out for you, and you have people that'll help you all the way up. And that's what was going on. So what Hilmar was saying was, let's take that Mount Everest and let's turn it into Mount Olympus. And let's put the top of the mountain 1,000 times higher. And that's what they did with the economy. So now if you want a Titan, it's a huge mountain to climb. If you want to build it, possible to do, not advisable, certainly not yet. And if you're going to do it, you're going to really have to climb. And that's what they're doing with this economy. They are stretching out those aspirational goals. Okay, I wanted to get to that point because people forget that, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I would say it's very hard when people are used to these satisfactions, always to have satisfactions. It's very hard to come back the other way. I can speak this from personal experience. So I used to rat in a carrier in ONSEC. Well, ever since the ESS or the dynamic bounty system changed, it's basically destroying the bounty. Bounty indexes. There's no point to ratting a carrier. So I just started ratting in subcapital, and it really felt like, I felt really bad. The take was not as good as before.
You downshifted.
It was down like, half or 1/3 of what I used to make. It's
a bitter pill.
I can really tell, like, say someone encountered someone else, maybe just quit. I can see that happening. Like, it's 100%.
It's a bitter pill. There's no doubt, because the calibration of what money is just wrecked. It's wrecked. And I have talked to people, a good friend says I used to make, I forget what it was, but I used to make $1 trillion a week, let's say. I'm sorry, that's not what it was, but not $1 trillion. I used to make $100 million a week. And now I can't make it. And that is a bitter pill. But that calibration of what money is worth is so game breaking, isn't it?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. Really.
I don't think there's any
number.
Come on. Well, 100 million a week. I'm sorry. Did I say 100 million? I meant 100 billion. Yeah, I meant 100 billion a week. Can't possibly be a normal person's income in the game in a healthy game.
That must be someone who is really good at either making ISK or ratting or whatever they're doing. But that's not a normal player. You have to look at a vast majority of people in nullsec, for example, like, because I'm from nullsec, so I can talk best about nullsec. Like, the life of a normal nullsec player is just basically carrier or just dread ratting max. Depends on how much effort and how much risk you want to put on the line. And this is the thing that's happening back then. It was there are a lot of people who are adding, there are a lot of people who are farming. That means there are a lot more targets for hunters. So hunters are always successful in some degree too. So it's not only people who are making ISK. There are also people who are destroying it, but they're just not destroying at the rate that the, uh, they were back then before, right? Before the dynamic bounty system change, before the scarce.
So you're saying it's all in relationship. As long as there's a lot of destruction going, then the income doesn't matter as much.
No. I mean,
Okay.
as long as a lot of farming, there will be a lot of destructions. If you look at pure number, there used to be more ships, I believe, destroyed back then because there are more people farming.
Oh, I see what you're
So
saying.
when outside people they don't want to farm anymore, the low side people, small game people, filament people, they're gonna go away too. So it's all in correlation.
All right. Well, we're getting bogged down on this. Let's move on to. Thank you, by the way, Sean. Moving on to the other thing that there's a number of things that got people mad. There's the scarcity. I think the war has made people mad. Either it's slowed down to a stalemate, or I don't know. People are upset about getting their homeland burned on one side or the other because Legacy Space burned too. Maybe not Northern Coalition PL or Fraternity or Horde, but Legacy had some space destroyed that they kind of wanted to keep. But whatever. There seems to be kind of like that fits into part of the equation. And then there's the pop-up scandal that came out, which was hardly a scandal. It's people really being more or less re-triggered. Some people call it the straw that broke the camel's back, but I think that's ridiculous. Not that it is a ridiculous thing to be mad about, but the idea that that's, on top of all this other stuff, equivalent to make you want to quit. But here we are, right? Like, let's deal with some of the people and what they have said. Some of them have said. What do you think about that pop-up? Oh, we went over the pop-up, and I don't think there's anything there except to say that it wrecks the expectation of new players. Why anybody's mad at that, I don't quite understand it. I think it's just a thing. But let's look at the Summer of Rage instead and go back to why people were mad back in 2011. That's almost exactly 10 years ago, right? June 2011. You were there. Tell us what were some of the things, or we can go through these together.
For me, I think the two big things for me was, so 10 years ago, kind of pay for play and this monetization of items and games was kind of a bit of a new thing, at least for me in
It's
PC
brand new,
games. Right, it wasn't the biggest thing. Maybe console gamers were kind of a little bit used to it, but on the PC side, not so much. And then it was just kind of vanity items. If it was a true pay for play, there was maybe just a couple out there, but it wasn't like it was hundreds of dollars for things. And then this monocle that really equivalently cost $1,000. That I was like, what the F are you talking about? If I gave a shit about a monocle, certainly wouldn't pay $1,000 for it. If I had to pay $2 for it, maybe you might be able to get me to give a shit about it. And then the dust thing, for me also, just solely on PlayStation. I kind of understand, at least after, as I said, I got to talk to David Reed was his name. I kind of understand why they were going that direction, but for me, it was just like, what are you thinking? For me as a player, right? Those are the two main things, and then there was a bunch of other things that really miffed some people off. The DDoS attacks, stuff like that. Incarna was just dog shit. It really was a bad expansion. They had been working on it, trying to pump it up. I was disappointed as a person who was, playing the game, subscribing at this point for 5 years or something. So I dumped a fair amount of money, a couple accounts, and really, that's what you worked on? That's what you're going to give me? And what you really seemed to be working on was how to sell me $1,000 monocle. Like, you guys got your priorities backwards. And as a company, they really seem to just be going in 18 directions, and none of them was the Eve direction, Eve Online direction. That's the way I took the whole thing. Now, CSM getting involved and all that stuff. There's a little bit of, I think there's a little personality, a little chest beating there going on. I think there was a little bit of a setup for Bernjita. I agree with some of the comments in the chat today, where some of that's a little meh, but the company wise, I certainly, the leaked emails and the way that CCP Zulu was commenting back, and sure, I understand as a manager you want to defend your people, but you're talking to the people who are paying those people's salary. You got to take a different take, no matter how mad you are. All these things. I didn't get hit by the DDoS attacks personally, but I know that pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah, sure. What did it feel like though in 2011? What was it? The actual feeling around it?
I mean, the game, 2009, 2010, there was so much to do. The game was expanding. There was fights everywhere. It was a very dynamic universe. There was still, the concept of Blue Donut, and there was things like that. But there was a lot of dynamic gameplay and a lot of dynamic wars.
Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, hold on right there, because I want to illustrate this point with some of the part of the article here is 2007 to 2009, which was like a really strong growth period. You had the Empyrean Age, which ushered in faction warfare.
Yes.
Quantum Rise brought the Orca, and now you actually had, real mining gangs with actual, a command ship for them, because it could boost them. Then you had Apocrypha, which ushered in wormholes and T3 in the same update. These are 6 months apart, pretty much.
Yep.
Then you have Sov mechanics changed to Dominion. Before this, you were having to put up sticks or what are they called? Pauses everywhere. And now you had this whole interesting Dominion Sov thing, which eventually got solved, but it was new at the time. And you had planetary interaction come right after that in Tyrannus, which is a whole new gameplay that you could partake in. So nobody was good at it. And if you were in the game at the time, you could get good at it before other people.
That's right.
So that's always good. That's what a new feature does.
And incursions too, right? As you have on the list here, right?
That came, planetary interaction. And then finally incursions came through. And all these things are, as you were saying, gameplay.
Yes. So as you're playing, right? I mean, just to talk about, like, for me, right? All right, I don't want to spend all my time just doing one thing. So now I had this PI I could go do. I got into PI. Sov mechanics, this blue space, null sec was very dynamic because the Sov mechanics changed enough to make it, at least for 2 or 3 years, very dynamic. And then it got to be a bit of a grind. But I mean, it was exciting to see the ebb and the flow in the wars. Wormholes changed. I got to keep looking over my shoulder problem that added just excitement to the game. Orca mining for those miners, faction warfare, you could zip off down into low sec and do some different things. It brought a bit of we could go for a roam there. I mean, there was a feeling through 2000, to 8, 9, 10, and coming into 11 of there's just every day of the week. If I have 3 or 4 character accounts and I'm doing stuff, I mean, I can be really busy doing this game and it doesn't feel like a job. That was what I really wanted to, that's where I'm ultimately going, is sometimes games can feel like a job. This game certainly has that potential, but for me, and I think a lot of the people I played with back in 2009, 2010, and going into this, is that there's just so much stuff to do. It was fun and engaging gameplay.
And all that was happening at a time when CCP is saying, you haven't seen anything yet. We're going to have walking in stations.
Wait. Wait. Just wait. If you're happy now.
You're going to see walking in stations. And we have a first-person shooter coming called Dust, right? They didn't say that, but we... And so the sky was the limit. Great stuff delivered, great gameplay, and the promise of more gameplay coming in the form of 2 different games. And then if you wanted to take all this and play it as a vampire, that was going to be kind of cool, this tabletop feeling. So there was a lot of promise. There was a lot. And it all came down to one expansion.
And that's exactly why I was saying, like, okay, you literally just blew sunshine up my butt for a year or more.
3.
And 2, 3, 4, you're like, this stuff's coming. And this is what you hit me with? $1,000 monocle. Go F yourself.
Well, so here's the order of what things happened. So I put the chart up because I did want to understand the compressed nature of time. This happened literally in 1 month, right? So the first thing you get is an announcement that CCP is going to take that first-person shooter that you were just salivating for and say it's only for PS3. which was already dying out. So who's going to buy a PS3 doesn't already have one just to play a game, because that PS3 is probably, end of life already because PS4 was coming out. Then after that letdown, you had the guys from from Lulz Boat decide they're going to take it out on Eve, probably because of this decision, because these guys were Eve players. In fact, the guy from Lulz Boat was actually the guy that helped take down Brave when they had a coup. The guy was like a little hacker kid, and he was the founder of Lulz Boat. So he aimed at his game. And so he took it down, I think, June 12th for like a week. It was not a short period of time. When these guys attacked, CCP was not prepared for DDoS at all like they are now. If we get knocked off with DDoS attacks, it might last a few hours. At worst, it lasts a day. We're talking like 5 or 6 or 7 days, maybe even longer. So it was really frustrating. You couldn't play, basically. And then Incarna expansion arrives, which is what we were just setting up, right? Like, okay, well, it doesn't matter. We're going to be walking in stations soon. No, you're not. There was no gameplay involved, but it was worse than that. It wasn't even a bad expansion. It was a devastating expansion because one is you no longer had a hangar view, which means you came in to a room where you were standing. And you couldn't run to your ship, which was like 100 yards in a certain direction. So it took you a while to get there.
Quarters.
Yeah, the captain's quarters.
Thing, right?
Yeah, and you couldn't run. You had to walk, and you had to walk around furniture and then start walking down the corridor. And it took you I think it took you a full minute to get to your ship before you could even board it. And this was so intensive graphically that while you're doing that, your computer is spinning up like it's going to fly like a plane, right? It was on fire because the graphics were so needy for resources.
2011, right? So pause there. Sorry.
Yeah.
Think about what your computer was like in 2011, 10 years ago. We're talking a Pentium, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking probably maybe 512 K of RAM on a video card. You might be lucky and have a 1 meg or a 2 meg video card if you paid a lot of money for it. We're probably talking we're talking some of the original Radeons. I don't even know if GeForce was out at that point. I mean, Radeon.
So the point is, you get called in for a fleet, though. You get called in for a fleet, and you can't even get to your ship because your computer is dying because of that, right? So that only lasted a week, let's be fair, because right away they're like, okay, we'll put the hangar view back in, but they didn't put the hangar view that we're used to. They put in a picture of the hangar. You couldn't turn it around or anything.
That's right.
And that was just an alternative. You could say, I want to skip Incarna and just go into that hangar view, just so I can log in to play the space game, right? Not this game. And by the way, the 3D modeling that was going on didn't look nearly as good as the pictures. So it just didn't look as good. It looked awful, actually, compared to the pictures that were produced by it with the new Incarna engine. So it didn't live up to it. Plus, it burnt your machine. Plus, you had no alternative. You had to go through it. And then eventually they put back I think it was a month later, they put back ship spinning and stuff. So all this stuff was in your way when it should have just not been, basically. And you had there was nothing to do in that room, and you couldn't show anybody that room, and it was not customizable in any way. So it really did nothing for you. So, okay, so that's Incarna. And that ushers in what's called the Noble Exchange, or the Nex store. And this is where you get into, now everybody's mad, right? People are mad because Dust is not going to be for them. They've not been able to play Eve because of Lulz Boat. And you haven't been able to play Eve because Incarna burnt your machine and won't let you in. So you're frustrated after a few weeks of this. And so all this stuff starts to leak from CCP by either employees or CSM. I don't know who leaked the stuff, but I shouldn't point at CSM. There's no evidence that they did it. But this Fearless memo comes out. I won't get into this stuff, but it just starts to make CCP look bad. Fearless memo comes out. And then the Monocle Gate issue apology comes out, which wasn't a great apology. It just reemphasized why people are mad. So every attempt that CCP is making to kind of calm things down is getting overrun by more and more anger. And you see Hilmar email get leaked, and that creates a situation where people are super mad. And then you have this emergency summit for damage control, which was even, to me, it was the most embarrassing moment to see CCP kind of say we're going to meet with the player representatives, because I was thinking at that time the player representatives were already overtaken by nullsec, and you had you can see Matani sitting there as chairman of the CSM. He's the last person I want up there talking to CCP about my game. Like, I'm suffering not being able to play EVE Online, and they're talking to, as far as I'm concerned, the Three Stooges, of the CSM. So it was totally wrong. And and that was 2011. It was it was frustration on top of frustration after hit after hit after hit after hit after hit.
Yeah, and
That's
so
what was going
large,
on.
like back to my analogy, like for now, small groups of people are being hit with some of the changes. Big groups of people are being hit with these changes, with these things, right?
Everybody.
And the incarnate just hits everyone, right? So there's a kind of some good ongoing conversation in the chat talking about the item I brought up about the CPU and stuff, right? Yes, i7s were just being released late in 2011. A lot of i5s, i3s, but those were just being released.
Those were
Most
expensive.
people,
yeah.
they were expensive. Most people were playing on Core 2 Pentiums, maybe a Celeron. And someone made the great point that up to that point, EVE Online had been kind of well known to be very kind of
Friendly.
low performance based
Right.
game that would do well, right?
Yeah.
Spreadsheets in space, right? It wasn't too graphically intensive, wasn't too CPU intensive. It did well with computers like that. And a lot of people were still playing with things that were, 3,
Well,
4,
because
5 years old.
not everybody's in the U.S.
That's right.
Right? They're playing in machines that are a lot older than what we're used to.
Because
Because
exactly.
people are
Some people
playing
with Linux machines with a Linux emulator, all sorts of stuff.
Right. So it was very international, but they got burnt out. And we made a predictive model here that talks about like just what the Summer of Rage did to the PCU, and you can see that it really flattened it when it should have gone up. You can see all these peaks down here. That's every expansion. People come check out the new stuff, say, it's all right, I'm out of here, bye.
Yep.
They go back to sleep. So it was always up, down, up, down, up, down. And it was always getting higher until Incarna, and then it actually didn't even go up. It went down and stayed down. And so that was pretty bad. So it should have been, we could have been cresting had it worked, had all this other stuff not been the way it was. We could have been upwards of 50, 60,000, which would have broken the record at the time. Eventually it did break 60,000, but it was later. Anyway.
Backtrack to nowadays, I'll give my suggestion, I guess, to CCP of what can actually help to have a new ceiling, at the same time giving people those stepping stones to move their path forward in EVE, which is creating T2 capitals. That's not the jump raider. So you're creating those new ceilings while at the same time, those before you can still get a capital, let's say a dread or carrier for, let's say, 2 billion or 3 billion. I think the price of 3 billion right now is doable for a new player. It's reachable. Same thing as a fully fitted Marauder, which is doable. And you have that kind of new ceiling with T2, let's say a Titan, T2 Titan, that's going to worth like right now like 150 billion, right? That's the price of what I think the material cost for Titan nowadays. So I think creating new ceilings at the same time don't remove what people had before. So people don't like the feeling of lose something, even though it's not something that they owned. It's an option that they had.
I see
giving people more
man.
options or new options.
Right.
I mean, to some part, it's kind of CCP lazy to not do that, to just use the old material, stretching it in some way, right? I think adding new things, like I think you guys said, right, back in the days, what really got people excited was the new stuff, right? It's the new stuff about walking stations, about like Dust 314, right? It's the new stuff they're adding into the game. People will get excited for that no matter what.
It's not new. But here's the difference, Shen. It's not new of more of the same. It's and those are contradictory, aren't they? But it's, in other words, it's not a further thing on the track that you're already running, because everybody ahead of you is still ahead of you. when you create new features, new gameplay, new mechanics that are for new gameplay, it's a race to see who can get there first. So people who are, somebody who's a really good and accomplished PvP player doesn't necessarily have an advantage in PI, right? And he may not even be interested in that. So you're not competing against the guys that are in front of you already. You're competing to race to learn new stuff that is different, and everybody's on the same footing. And that's attractive in an MMO that's this old. You don't want to come into a game where everybody's already settled.
But whatever they're doing right now to the game, the scarcity thing, it's widens the gap between old players and new players even more.
But why don't the players that are here feel like that's a powerful thing for them? Because the people coming after them, the ones that are signing up now and in the next 6 months, you're going to be much richer than those guys. Why isn't that attractive?
Because people are looking ahead. They're always looking ahead of the people who are ahead of them. They're always looking to catch up. They're always to make improvements to themselves. And right now what they're saying is, before it was like, I could use a month of time to improve to my next goal. It takes 5 months. And that's what's causing a lot of people to quit. People don't look back. They look back sometimes to make them feel good when they're depressed, but they always look ahead for energy, for reasons to move forward.
But even if the people ahead of them are slowed down too?
Well, if anything, the scarcity makes people who are already behind slower than people who are ahead.
Well, it depends. Let's say you and I were both miners inside of nullsec, right? But you were a trillion ahead of me, right? And then scarcity hits, and now all of a sudden we're both stuck in the mud. And I look around and say, you know what? This sucks. I'm going to sit here and keep doing what I've normally done. I don't have time to learn a new gameplay. But you decide, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to run incursions, or I'm going to run some missions in wormhole space or whatever. You look at alternatives that are presented to you, and now you're making a lot more money than I am doing it my old way. So you're actually catching up to me if you're the one that was behind. I forget which one of us was ahead. So isn't that incentive? Because you could not close the gap to me, right? Because you and I were both miners. Whatever you did, I could do better. But now money is much better for people who do alternative things to what you and I were doing. There's a chance for you to catch up.
So that's two different things. One is a continuation of one path, right? If we're both miners before, we're keep mining, that's one path that I was talking about. And right now you're stepping away to a parallel path, right? There are many paths in EVE that are different for different reasons, right? Some paths may make money faster than others. Some paths can be more enjoyable or more relaxing, right? Mining is more relaxing than incursion running, right? You can get people really relaxed, have a coffee, watch a movie at the same time. So it's meant for different things. It's what are you looking for? What are you looking for in this game, right? Are you looking for make quick ISK, go ratting, go do incursions? Are you just looking for relax?
Yeah,
go mining.
I think, if we're walking down a path and I'm 100 feet in front of you, there are shortcuts to catch up to me. But that's not attractive to you because you might have to go uphill. You might have to do something you don't want to do in order to catch up to me. But I don't see.
But
I think
what's more scary is going to be if you change the path that I take, which is another shortcut, right? If a person with 1 trillion takes that shortcut as well, they're going to accelerate faster than the person started with 1 billion.
Right. So it's about the people who are embracing the new way of making money that are going to succeed. And that's going to change who's on top as far as money goes to some degree, I guess. I don't know. The psychology is that you feel like all this stuff is being taken away from you, and then people like you, or you represent in this case, things are being taken away from you, and I totally get it. I don't know how it's avoidable, but I get you don't want to take things away from people because then all they feel is there's no trade-off. They've just lost. They haven't gained anything.
Yeah, so instead of doing subtraction, you're doing addition. You add in more things. You add in new things into the game. For example, like when Triglavian ship line, when the new entire Triglavian ship line was added, people were excited because there's another path that they can take, or another gameplay, or another goals that they can make for themselves, right? I want my goal is to get a Lashak or get a Zanitra, right? That's all their goals,
Yeah.
right? So
Triglavian drum,
adding
not
new
expensive.
things, yeah, adding new things will be always a good thing. I mean, I feel like after the Triglavian invasion, there may be something in CCP's oven that's cooking, but we don't know what it is. I'm feeling there may be something, like maybe second chapter 2 or chapter 3 of that invasion, but there must be something that's new that's coming. That's keeping the storyline
Probably.
and the players motivated.
Probably there's something coming. Right. They're not doing nothing.
At least I hope.
Yeah.
At least I hope
Probably.
there will be.
All right. Well, again, we can have this discussion many times over. There's a lot of facets to it. One thing I want to point out about the PCU is people are worried about it. They're saying, hey, this is evidence. What you're doing is not working. Turn back. I disagree. Don't turn back. If you turn back, this game is just dead. And here's the reason. If CCP decides that abundance is actually the answer to the pain of scarcity, then I just don't see a future for it. You've already experienced what abundancy looks like, and I think it breaks the game. But if you look at it here, this is the decline right here. Maybe I can zero in on it. 2011 through 2012. Let's go 10 through 12. Yeah, there's the decline that kept going down. There should have been a bump there, but there wasn't. Maybe this is a bump. Yeah, January, and then it just never recovered all the way down to 40K. So we went from, in January about 53 down to, 36. Well, let's go to something a little fairer. 44. Yeah, so it lost a good 15,000 players. We're kind of in the same thing. We're at like 32 down to 22. We've lost about 10,000, and that's figuring in COVID as well. Here's what I'll say about COVID. There are some smart players. One of them's out there, right? I'm just going to pick on him, Dominarch. Smart guy, dedicated EVE Online player. And he said something that just illuminated the issue to me about post-COVID society. Basically said, I just don't want to sit at my computer right now. And isn't that it? Just don't want to sit at your computer. It doesn't matter what's in front of you. You don't really want to sit at your computer right now because you've been there for a year pretty much. And one thing that is interesting is some of the games have actually gone up. If you look at, let's do some looking at Steam charts here. A lot of MMOs have gone down because of post-COVID, but let's look at games like Final Fantasy, right? Take a look at Final Fantasy, and it's up 30-day like 7%. I think if we click on it. Yeah, let's make that a little bit bigger so we can see. You see how that's just going way up? They did something right? And what they did is they hired a really, really, really good streamer that had a bunch of fans, and he started streaming, and he made it popular to stream Final Fantasy at this time. And that made everybody want to stream Final Fantasy. And I think they might have had some new content come out. And so basically, they've done some things right in order to reverse that trend. There's another one, Guild Wars 2, right? Now, that didn't have any new content. But let's have a look at that. No Steam chart. And that one also may have gone up. So it's not here. Let's look at SOE Online. Is that how you do it? No. Let me write that out. Elder Scrolls. Let's see. No, this looks like it went down too. Yeah, it's dipping down too, or I don't know. They did have an expansion, and they look like they just kind of had a little blip. They didn't really go up. And then finally, World of Warcraft. I'm seeing these for the first time. Warcraft. No, it's not in Steam. because I think you have to sign in through their own
Yeah,
thing.
it's not Steam game.
Yeah, so it's not
Blizzard.
Steam related. Well, I was thinking about this and I was like, what would make some games go up and some games go down? And I think if you think about it, okay, let's look at this World of Tanks. Thanks for some. If you think about it, this is the conclusion I was coming to, and it's just based on only a few data points. But what if the places that are really suffering the post-COVID slumps are games that are popular in the United States, because it's the United States that is really coming out of COVID's restrictions, right? This has gone down too, so that makes sense. We'll do War Thunder.
Well, there's, it's the confluence also of summer, right? In the northern hemisphere, majority of gamers are in the northern hemisphere. Summer traditionally, anyways, is you lop a bunch of people off who travel or tend to the farms or the gardens or do whatever the heck it is they want to do in the summer, and it's traditionally a bit of a downtime for gaming. Add in COVID, it's a multiplier, right?
Yeah. Well, my point is maybe part of the exacerbation of these things. So as you said earlier, Rundle, it's more than one thing, clearly more than one thing.
Yep.
But one of the reasons that you can't pick a trend line is because EVE Online tends to be really popular in the United States. I could tell by the fan base of Talking in Stations. If it's any reflection of EVE, it's a very, very heavy US time zone. And that makes...
we can look at that during the CSM vote, right? I think
that's right.
United States won the majority of the vote. So majority of the vote in CSM came from the US. It's not majority, like over 50%, but the highest percentage compared to other countries.
Yeah. Do you remember what that was in 16? Like what that vote was? I think it's...
I just remember it's the highest. I don't remember what the number was.
Yeah.
They had a graphic somewhere. If we need to track that down,
I wish I could find that right quick, but that's a good point. So CSM kind of proves the same thing that I know from our own analytics and metrics and from what we know, and that is that EVE Online, as far as the community of EVE Online, a lot of it is United States based, which is a group that is coming out of COVID, at least COVID restrictions, whereas games that are played like Final Fantasy in Korea, I don't think they had those restrictions. I don't know if they have a post-COVID slump. Do you know? So that might be a part of that. It's hard to compare, is my point.
Yeah, so I just want to jump in here for a second, because the chat has been hitting up a couple other of these little things, like you lop 2% here, you lop 5%, right? So there's been a big war for a year, right? I mentioned the war, but I didn't really mention the impact. So a few people have mentioned it. You can't go mining, you can't maybe do some of the other economic things that you were doing before, and so that lops a bit off. And then how does that roll into all these other things we've talked about? And it's easier to just blame CCPs and is causing the problem, or you're not making the game fun enough or whatever, right? There's all these little elements. To me, this time, and again, back to the Summer of Rage versus the Summer of Disengaged, to me, night and day. And so take a second here to comment on this article that kind of started us talking about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good article. I've read kind of through it a little
bit. Good writer.
Yeah, good writing. I'm not this for me. I'm not trying to say bad article. You're completely wrong, bro.
I am.
But I don't buy what you're selling. I don't buy your article so much. I think it's a bit of placating to some of the people on social media, the 1% people who are going, oh yeah, it's all these reasons. I don't think there's enough research in here for me that says that really aligns it to what really did happen 10 years ago. And having been there and here now, completely different feelings, completely different aspect of what's happening. I'm just being more Canadian about it, I guess. Matterall, I don't want to completely say it's a
I
shit
like the
article,
writer.
but
I like the writer a lot. Doesn't mean
yeah, good writer, good
yeah.
writer. I just don't agree with his conclusions, and I think it's
to me, I feel like he's been talking to the wrong people. Well, maybe not the wrong people, but he's been talking to half the people.
A very small percentage of people. Like I said, there's like a 1% of people, I think, who are going to probably be saying this. Because if he hadn't pointed it out or someone hadn't pointed this out, I look at Twitter and other places. I haven't seen anyone call it a Summer of Rage 2.0 yet. First time I heard it was reading his damn article. So can't be that prolific.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah. Yeah,
I
I'll say
haven't
two
seen it
things,
anywhere.
here. Yeah, one is back to the thing that I talked to Matter about. Also, skill played a big part in that. Like when you change pathways, that's the whole point of skills point system is you can't change pathway really easily. And second of all is the PCU for Serenity. That's a thing that's always brought up, at least in AOM, when we compare two servers.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened before is Serenity used to have 10K and Tranquility used to have 30K. So it's always like 3 times over Serenity. That's always the thing that we're seeing. Right now we're seeing it dropping to two times, which is 20K. And now we're seeing still dipping down. So maybe one day that there will be same amount of
That'd be awesome.
people in Tranquility and than in Serenity. So who knows?
Here's looking at Serenity, and they have a little bit of a fall off too. Can't see what this is. July.
So they have a day. So they have a it's basically summer, I think. So what you're saying right now is there's like big sharp turns up and down. That's because it's not all time zone. This is only during what we call right now AUTZ or CNTZ that they're playing. So it's only nighttime in China. So that's why you see like spikes all over the place.
Yeah.
During the daytime, people go to work and come back for a game.
These guys are the night owls here. We're playing in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
There has been a slow trend down here. Now they're getting the expansions that we're getting, right? So this is an interesting take to look at it and see how it's being affected. It's definitely not as dramatic as what we're experiencing, but
yeah, I mean,
actually,
my theory on it is there was so much abundance beforehand. There's no need to worry about scarcity, so it has a less impact on it.
Oh, you think they were too abundant, so they're more immune to it and bigger stockpiles?
Yeah, and it's easier right now. So what the industrial change, at least right now, you basically need more people to have more resources from everywhere in the universe. And since everyone basically belong to one coalition, it's kind of easy to make connections with each other and stuff like that. It depends on which perspective you look at it.
Yeah, get what you need, that kind of thing. All right. Well, that's interesting, actually. I didn't think of looking at Serenity because they have differences, obviously, but they are now caught up. They used to be like a patch or an expansion or two behind us, but now they're patched at the same time pretty much. So,
so I think 1 week or 2 weeks apart.
Yeah.
So
but that's
1 week or two. So
that's different than like 2 months, 3 months. The way
exactly. So would you see a lot of Serenity players come to us to ask for any news that's gonna come to the server, right? So getting prepared.
So we're their hobo leaks?
Essentially. So if they look at our hobo exams, like way beforehand.
Yeah. Theory. Oh, that's funny. Well, okay, that was a good thing. So good writer, don't necessarily like this article for it. Feel like he's definitely writing from a perspective of people that are around him or that he's talking to. I think he did talk to CCP in this, who didn't really give any hints about information. If you want to learn about what really happened in 2011, this is probably the definitive article. As I said, it was published inside of, inside of the EVE Online Empires of EVE Volume 2. It was referenced like 3 or 4 times. And that's because it's got a lot of facts in it. Again, researched not only by me, but Dirk McGurk and Noisy Gamer. And Minxie helped me fix up the article because she's my all-time editor and fixes my writing. So we did that together. And I think it's definitive. It really captures the moment and the density of trouble on the back of what was great up until then, and then just the overflowing anger from frustration from not being able to play the game, basically, right? And how much damage that did because people got fired because they didn't make their quota. They weren't able to pay back the money they needed to pay back. Or maybe they did, but it damaged their ability to continue. And here's the problem with Summers of Rage, right? If you think it's some romantic thing that the players did that was great, I think it took away the spirit of EVE Online in a significant way. It went from a pen and paper landscape, a D&D type landscape where multiple different things to do, to something that was obsessed with keeping the players happy with balance changes. And I'll tell you what, that killed the spirit of a world and a metaverse that was growing and made it just a video game. And that's what we have now. So this can do damage. And I don't even know what people want out of this Summer of Rage, if that's what they want to call it. What do they actually want? They don't want new players to get a $5 chance to recoup their ship. Is that really the hill that you're willing to kill the game on? Is that why you're quitting and why you're having other people quit? And let's take that out of the way and just say that's a straw man. Like, there's not many of those guys. And if you are, you're your own special kind of strange guy that you need to do that. But the people who are mad about the situation they're in now with scarcity and where the game is, look, I get it. Getting things taken away from you or having the goalpost moved on you is not fair. It's not fair. But the game is so sick with not just what your guys, Shen, are telling you, but I've talked to other people who are so twisted in their conceptions of what value is, right? I just talked to somebody as an example that built a little bit of ammo, then built one cruiser, and then built a Titan. One person did that. And to me, I think that's ridiculously...
That was the progression they took?
That's the progression they took, yeah. And I just thought, like, funny. How am I supposed to come into this game and say, I want to build a corporation that opens a shipyard, and all my guys, whether they're 20 or 100, are going to build these big, magnificent ships. Oh, wait a minute. This person that couldn't give a crap about my plan just built one of those things because he or she was in the right position. Never mind. Sorry, guys. I'm going to a different place to seek out that dream, that aspiration. Now, that guy that wants to build a corporation to open shipyards to build big ships, now he's important. Now he's valuable. And that is what was missing for a long time. So hopefully we see more of those guys. Whew. And hopefully we see more talking stations after this if I don't get run off the road after this episode. By the way, I've been looking at this fountain going on in chat where people are just constantly saying stuff. And I don't know if it's good or bad. I'm going to assume they're talking to each other and everybody's happy.
Oh, yeah, it's a happy crowd tonight. Besides, we're disengaged. We'll be disengaged. Everyone's disengaged. We're disengaged from chat. We'll be disengaged. You might get disengaged from the road even. Who knows?
I get disengaged from the ground as my car goes flying or whatever.
That's right.
All right.
So I guess we'll end on a little bit of news that I saw in Tenerife. So there's a new alliance coming into Tenerife called the Dragon Dynasty. So before they were in Pureblind fighting Womp, but right now they got their iHubs in Tenerife, and it seems like they're very, very small alliance for a null block or for a null alliance in general. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to come next. Are they so far we are not blue with them. Last time I checked. So maybe they're part of RC. We don't know yet.
What's their call sign again? They're
DD.
They're DD?
Dragon Dynasty.
Yeah, I just clicked on it and it showed me Dread Bomb, I think.
If you look at iHub in Tenerife.
Oh, okay. Let me switch that. Tenerife. iHub owners. Yeah, I'm looking at iHubs. I see DD here. Maybe I clicked on the wrong one. Oh, there you are. Yep, there you are. Yeah. Dragon Dynasty. I clicked on the wrong one. That's on me. So here they are.
Yeah.
Look at that. Went from 100 to 200 people. Good for them. Be interesting to see what they do. That's good news. We can end on good news, right? Rundle, I feel like I just swallowed up all the oxygen. Do you have anything else?
No, that's good. I can't, wow, hour and a half. Hope you guys enjoyed us doing a little history, revisiting our golden years, and drawing some parallels. And I will again say sorry to the article writer. I know you put a lot of effort into it. It didn't work for me, but try again. Write some more stuff, please.
Oh,
At least give us something to talk about.
yeah, he's a good writer, and he'll write more
Yeah.
stuff. We disagree with this one.
Yeah, people disagree with what we have to say sometimes too, though. So, but for the listeners, 141, we thought this show could have gone anywhere. So all 141, well, 140 of you, I'm not going to say thank you to Dominark, but 140 of you, thank you for watching and listening and keeping engaged for the whole thing. I appreciate it.
All right. All right, guys, we will see you next time on Talking in Stations.